Hey guys, I debated long and hard on whether I was going to release these maps and the information to where Sam Bass buried the portion of his gold coins that was robbed from the railroad just before he died. And I finally decided that, the truth is, I will never ever get to this area. I've got so many other places that I'm looking and working on that I just physically don't have time to get this. So I've decided to release this information. Now, I haven't checked this out at all. This is good information, but I don't know that now that this stuff is buried in a subdivision or not. I have no idea. So what I ask is if you do happen to find anything because of this, you'll let me know and share a little bit of it with me so I can share some of it with the family who entrusted me with this information. This information is first-hand accounts and first-hand information that hasn't seen the light of day before. As you'll see, not only was this the hideout for Sam Bass and his gang, but also Jesse James and his gang hid out here. Also, there was a jackload of silver that the Indians buried here when they attacked the Spanish mule train. And also, there was an old silver mine somewhere around here. So this ought to be an interesting place to treasure hunt, and who knows what could be found. Now, Sam Bass was an outlaw who over time became famous in Texas, just like the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid did here in Utah. Like I said, this is good information that was gathered by a professional treasure hunter, E.F. Chandler, back in the late 20s and early 30s, and hasn't seen the light of day till now. So with that, here's a little bit about Sam Bass, and then on to the clues, the maps, that hopefully should get somebody to the treasure.
Sam was born on a farm near Mitchell, Indiana on July 21st, 1851. But little is known of his youth. In Denton, Texas, he served as deputy to Sheriff W.F. Egan. During that time, he became interested in racing fast horses, such as his Jenny, which was jockeyed by Luther Clark for a time. Later, the jockey was Dick Edson, who never lost a race. For a time, Sam punched cattle around San Antonio and Uvalde, where he met Joel Collins. After finding himself broke at the end of a cattle drive to Dakota, he went in search of some quick and easy money. Sam, Joel, and Frank Jackson started off slowly, robbing a few stagecoaches, and then topped it off by robbing a Union Pacific train in Ocala, Nebraska, which netted them $65,000 in freshly minted gold pieces.
It's Sam's portion of these gold coins that he buried just before he was killed of what we're looking for.
They got another $458 from a small safe, but missed $200,000 in another safe they couldn't open. Then they robbed all the passengers and got $1,300 and 4 gold watches. The gang scattered, but 4 of them were caught. Sam and Frank traveled south to Texas, where Sam knew his way around. They hid out in a cave and buried the gold coins in the floor of the cave. Sam recruited a new gang, which now consisted of himself, Frank Jackson, Henry Underwood, Seaborn Barnes, Thomas Spotswood, Sam Pipes, and Arkansas Johnson. They robbed several stages between Fort Worth and Weatherford, the Texas Central train twice, and the Texas and Pacific train twice. Next, Sam set his sights on banks. They decided to start with the Bank of Round Rock, so they left their cave hideout south of the Eagle Ford. But before leaving, they covered the entrance of the cave by prying loose a large rock overhanging the entrance. As it fell, it split in two. Sam was betrayed by one of his gang members, Jim Murphy, who bribed himself out of jail by promising to tip off the law before one of Sam's holdups. Sam was ambushed in Round Rock and was killed. Frank Jackson escaped and was never captured. Pinkerton detectives trailed him for years with no success. In his later years, Frank spent a lot of his time around the Dallas area and Eagle Ford. Some years ago, Manuel Chandler met Frank Jackson, who was staying with Bill Cothram at Eagle Ford on the western edge of Dallas.
Now, Frank Jackson died in 1930, and this information was gathered by Mr. Chandler in the late 20s and early 30s, and so some time ago to us is a long time. Now, we wouldn't have got this information except for Mr. Chandler shared it with Dr. Orrin Swearingen in the 1950s, and he wrote this information down and preserved it for us.
Frank related the story of his association with the outlaw Sam Bass and of the location of their hideout. He said the cave was 8 miles south of Eagle Ford, as the crow flies, on the west side of the mountainside. He said the cave entrance was large enough to ride a horse into, but they kept their horses in a corral a few feet above the cave on the top of the mountain. He also said there were several names carved in the walls of the cave, including those of Frank James, Jesse James, Cole Younger, and Bob Younger, as well as the members of the Sam Bass gang. Several years ago, a man and his son were hunting in the Cedar Hill area, where they saw and explored a cave. There were many names carved on the wall, including Jesse James. The boy added his name to the wall, but he forgot his knife and left it inside the cave. During my investigation, I met and had interviews with several other people who also had seen the cave. They were 1. An old trapper and hunter named Harry Sleeger, who crawled inside to a large room. 2. Billy Chapman's mother said she used to play in the cave as a young girl. 3. Ray Summers, the brother of Billy Chapman's mother, verified his sister's story and added that he, too, had played in the cave in his childhood. He took me to the area to show me the cave, but couldn't find it, deciding that it must have collapsed. 4. Mrs. Castleman used to live close to the cave and played in it as well as a child. She also found a $20 gold piece there. 5. Mrs. Castleman's sister said she had been inside the cave and also said she once found 2 pistols near the cave. 6. Winfred Yeager's son, Wayne, has been inside the cave. 7. Morris Rettenberry claimed to have been inside the cave. 8. Dr. Nash of 4702 Bryan Street in Dallas has been inside the cave. All of these people said the cave was on the west side of Buzzard's Roost, which is about 1 mile northeast of Cedar Hill. Some of them also reported the existence of several interesting things, such as 1. An arrow carved on a rock ledge pointing down the hillside to a buried cache of several jackloads of gold, according to an Indian with a deer-hide map who once came there searching for it. I found the arrow. 2. Harry Sleeger described a tree with a dagger cut into it, a nearby boulder with a hand carved on it. Near that is a suspicious mound with a depression that surrounds it. 3. There is a legendary gold mine near a spring at the foot of Buzzard's Roost. According to the map, there were rails underground over the mine tunnel. These rails were later uncovered. There is no longer an open cave entrance to be seen. There is a rocky outcropping or ledge present where the cave was reported to have been. At the foot of the ledge there is a very large boulder which is split in 2, as described by Frank Jackson, but no tunnel entrance is visible behind it. Perhaps erosion has been responsible for the covering it, so a considerable amount of excavation would be required to verify its existence. The forest and brush on top of the Buzzard's Roost is so thick it is easy to become lost en route from the road to the area of the cave. Several times I broke out of it on the wrong part of the western face of the hill.
These maps should get you close to the area. If you have a drone to put up in the air to help you scour the area a little bit better, that would probably help you out. Depending on the foliage, if there's a lot of foliage still like he says, a drone with LiDAR on it would even be better to help see through the vegetation and see some of the old trails. If you can find where that old corral was, and it's not going to be there, but you should be able to see with LiDAR where the horses milled around in that tight area, then you need to get a ground-penetrating radar to see if there is a cavern underneath that area to where this caved-in cave is. But regardless, I would take a metal detector and metal detect all around that area, especially if there's any prominent landmarks in the area that an outlaw would have used to hide his treasure. Good luck! If you happen to know any more about this story or have any other clues to this, leave a comment and let us know. And thanks for watching. And with that said, good luck, and that's a wrap.